Hello, Moral, and welcome to Oral Islam. My guest is definitely not a stranger. He's been here many times before. I have the Secretary of Pro Swalika Foundation, Mr. Brison. How are you doing, sir?
I'm fine, sir. I want to extend a Happy New Year to you and your family and to your viewers. And I'm hoping that everyone has health and wealth for 2025.
Thank you, and Happy New Year to you and your family, and
Thank
all
you,
the
sir.
best for this year.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
It's amazing how 2025 has started, huh?
Yes.
Unbelievable. A lot of people are afraid to fly now
Yes.
because of all those airplane incidents. I said to my family, don't worry, man. Flying is still safer than driving.
Correct. Especially with all the accidents
Right.
that you're seeing right now on the road. Flying is definitely a lot safer than getting into a motor vehicle.
So you did a lot in 2024. You was in Azerbaijan?
Yes, just came back from Azerbaijan in early December. I was invited by Dr. Rhoda Arundel to attend as part of the delegation, the 11-member delegation that went over to Azerbaijan.
Yeah.
The premise of the visit was to discuss the present colonial status that we have on the northern side of the island and the southern side of the island. We were invited by the Baku Initiative Group, which is a group that is based in Azerbaijan. They're an NGO. Just for the record, they've met with many other colonial countries or territories, we should say, Guadeloupe, Martinique, Bonaire, New Caledonia. So basically the French and Dutch, let's say, colonies or territories. And they've given us an audience whereby we can explain what exactly is going on internally in St. Martin. Both sides of the island. So the delegation consisted of members from the northern side of the island and the southern side of the island. And it was a very rewarding experience, traveling to some place I've never been before, and just experiencing the professionalism of the Baku Initiative Group. And yeah, it was good. We had our platform. We met with media. We went to television stations, newspaper, interviews, etc., and got a chance to kind of explain what's going on internally in St. Martin on both sides of the island.
It looks like the issues around St. Martin never really changed. I remember back in 1980 when we had all those round table conference
Correct.
reports and everything else. And I was a young guy then, very optimistic, looked like things are going to get better for St. Martin. We won't have any more problems.
Right.
Or we had problems, not a lot. It seems like we have more problems now.
I think what happens is, as a young, let's say, country, quote unquote, you're always going to have growing pains. So, 14 years in, 15 years in, nobody gets it right all the way. So I think, we focus sometimes a lot on the problems. And we do have problems. Every country has problems, but at the end of the day, people are still emigrating here. I always remind people that all the time.
Best place in the world.
But yeah, like I said, people are waking up this morning, how can I get to St. Martin? So I think for us that are grassroots St. Martiners, we kind of remember the glory days, but I don't think on an overall scheme, I think we're still doing well. We have a lot to fix, but I think comparatively, if you compare it to a lot of places around the region, I think we're okay.
I think the reason why I said what I said, I look at St. Martin from a St. Martin perspective.
Correct.
And I look at my people.
Yeah.
And I was born here and I
Yes.
grew up here.
Yes, sir.
And we've had people that are well-to-do, and those that are not so well-to-do, But what you see now is the level of poverty that never existed before on this island. In places, I went to the Dominican Republic, I saw it there, but I never saw it here till the last 10 years.
Yes.
That for me is a concern because we should have done better for our people. Unfortunately, we haven't done that.
Right. I would like to just state this. We have to also remember that the new St. Martiner, when I say the new St. Martiner, let's say the young St. Martiner, let's say 15 to 25 years old, most of them, or a good majority of them, are first generation St. Martiners. So their parents came here from some place. A lot of them, or if they were even born here, their parents came here within the last 25, 30 years from some place. And it's hard sometimes when you're emigrating to get into the full influx of what was put down by your ancestors and my ancestors who were here for decades before that time and built up, had land, had properties and those kind of things to be able to send their children away, to come back, to, educated, to get those high profile jobs. I think a lot of time, the kinds of, not for everyone, but the kind of people that have emigrated here have had to kind of find themselves and then working 2 and 3 and 4 jobs. When we were growing up, I hardly knew anybody working 2, 3, 4 jobs. They had one stable job, maybe taxi driver and something else, but most people had one job, and then you had 2 jobs in the household, and that was enough to go on vacation, pay your mortgage, build a little something on the side. And that has changed. So now what you're finding is a lot of people are having 2 and 3 and 4 jobs because St. Martin has gotten expensive. The cost of living obviously has gone through the roof, but then the wages have remained stagnant. Now we just had a raise, I think last year in January, where it went up to some $800 to $1,000, but $1,000 in St. Martin, it's nothing because a 1-bedroom apartment in St. Martin is basically $1,000, which is forcing now people to have to find secondary and tertiary jobs, or third jobs, I should say, to be able to survive. So I think that is where you're starting to see the kind of disconnect that we didn't see before with the poverty levels.
I think the reason why I said what I said is because, you're secretary for Pro-Swaliga Foundation.
Yes.
It's a foundation that's an advocate for what?
The decolonization of all the islands of the former Netherlands, Antilles. Yes.
And what has happened is that, in 1980, I came back to St. Martin for a brief time, worked at PGD2 for about a year, then went back to the States to continue, finish my studies. And it was a time of transition for St. Martin. We had real leaders. We didn't have the kind of people we had. Real leaders. We had Wadi, Vance James, and you fast forward today, 2025, and it's like, what's going on?
Right.
We should have gotten better.
Yes.
In those areas, we should have gotten better into. I know people that, and maybe I'm too idealistic here. I know people that had a lot. Financially well, and they lost everything. And you can't blame government for that because many times that's our fault.
That's private.
But there's some circumstances surrounding that sometimes that lends to that. And I give an example. By now we should have fixed the tax. Taxation for people compared to others. We haven't done what we've done. Actually, we have a tax authority that focuses only on the local people. You see, so when you look at what you're doing with Pro-Swaliga, you're fighting a good cause, but your people, the majority of people are weaker than they were back in 1980. You see, that's how I see it. And it's unfortunate. It should be just the opposite way.
Well, my answer to that is that we ultimately are responsible for who we place in leadership. I think the electorate, and I say this controversially, I think the electorate is ultimately to blame for the type of leadership that we've had 2010 going forward. I don't want to call any names, but you would look over the parliaments that we had just over the last 4 or 5 years, and you would see certain members of parliament that have been elected to parliament, and you ask yourself and scratch your head and say,
doing nothing.
What are they doing? How? So these individuals that you and I both know, and we're not here to discredit anyone, but we know who we're talking about. How did these individuals end up being in the highest legislative body in the land? It ultimately comes down to the electorate. If the electorate continues to make these uninformed decisions based on whether it's nepotism, whether it's family, whether it's vote buying, whatever it is, you are ultimately the problem that we don't have the kind of leadership that we need to have in Parliament. You cannot, and I always say this again, no elected member of Parliament ran in and took the seat. Somehow 300 people, 400 people, 250 people saw it fit to give these individuals their support at the polls, and there you have it. So until the electorate starts to break away from these kind of, antiquated ways of voting, I would have to agree with you again that this is going to be the order of the day. And for us to be able to move forward with the decolonization process, it's going to require having the leadership and the vision of the stalwarts we had in the past, like Dr. Claude Watty and Vance James Jr. To give a few. There were more, but we're just going to name those two for now.
Yes. Because then you're bringing your people along with
Correct.
you.
Correct.
You cannot complete that process without your people.
Bringing them along, and also bringing them along because you have a benevolence and you have a love for your people. Like, for instance, whenever I talk to you, you always talk about your experiences of going away to study. I went away to study. I want that for all of our children. Matter of fact, I want a step forward. I want to see a university in St. Martin that's accredited to give an associate's, bachelor's, master's, and PhD here. Barbados has it, Jamaica has it, Guyana has it, Trinidad has it. Why don't we? Curacao has it.
We have a university there.
In name. Yes, so...
But it's a private institution.
Correct. But no, what I am saying is, we have, not to go off track, we have tried that model for the last 30, almost 40 years. It's gone nowhere, yes? We have all kind of MOUs and all this. I say, shut it down, make it a University of the West Indies campus. Why? A lot of the citizens that are immigrating here that we talked about before, coming from these countries where the University of West Indies is the standard for them. So you put a campus here, it's going to do the same thing that's happened with the American University of the Caribbean in Coopercoy. Yeah. It would do the same thing for Phillipsburg, and you would have people coming in from Antigua, Dominica, St. Lucia, and all these places to study in St. Martin, because first of all, this is a place where they want to be, and it's a second place where they could get educated and have a formal education, accredited education, and you kill two birds with one stone.
No, Mr. Brison,
yes,
I agree with you 100%. The problem is, St. Martin University is a private institution, not really recognized by the government per se.
Right.
And there's been issues with that.
Right, with funding and those kind of things.
For a very, very long time.
Sir.
So maybe the government of St. Martin needs to focus on what you just said.
Yes.
Just have your own.
Something. And here's the thing. Anguilla has an annex of the University of West Indies there. St. Kitts has one. Antigua has one. So it's nothing. I'm not saying anything that is like out of the ordinary.
It would be the best annex.
We would have the best annex out of all three of those places because people want to be here.
Yeah.
So it's not something that I'm saying that, that hasn't been tried before. It's happening in Anguilla, it's happening in St. Kitts, it's happening in Antigua.
We have a new Minister of Education.
Yes.
She's very progressive. We never know.
We never know. And one thing I would say with the new Minister of Education is that she's quite intelligent. A lot of people have said that she doesn't have an education background per se, but being a minister, you're only as good as the team that you have around you. I've looked at the team, and the team looks like a very good team that she has around her, and she's quite intelligent. So I think let's give her a chance, and hopefully she'll hear this interview and look into getting the University of West Indies on our shores.
Let me jump back to what you said about education.
Yes, sir.
I'm an advocate for education.
So am I. Yes, sir.
Daughters all with advanced, with master's degree, doctors, lawyers, psychologists. So I am a real advocate for education.
Yes, sir.
But if you look back, Mr. Brison, back when they had Bradshaw, you ever heard of Bradshaw from St. Kitts?
Yes, he's the leader of St. Kitts that led them into independence. Yes.
No real formal education, per se.
No.
Used to go to the library and read books.
Correct.
Claude, the same.
Correct.
Okay, and you go on and on. But these guys had vision.
And a love for the people. Yes.
Today now we have real educated people.
Yeah, but
and no vision.
Yeah. I think, and I'm saying this as a person with 30 years of education, I will say this. Education sometimes, having all of these lofty degrees sometimes makes you complacent, less of a risk-taking ability.
Exactly.
So to be able to lead your people into independence, it's a risk. And what you will find ultimately, like for instance, I'll use for an example Facebook and Microsoft. Bill Gates dropped out of Harvard or Yale, I believe, and Zuckerberg left, I think he was at MIT or one of those Ivy League schools, and he left. He had a vision, he left.
Steve Jobs, the same thing.
They left. So these were risk takers. So what you'll find most times is that those that have these advanced degrees, they're less willing to take risks because they have the advanced degrees, they have the cushy jobs, and they don't want to rock the boat. So what you will normally find in revolutions, it's a revolution per se. You'll find that most of the time, a lot of the times, those leaders were not overly formally educated, and had a vision and had a love for their people. Marcus Garvey, a great example, had millions and millions of followers in the 1920s without television, without radio, without this, was not really formally educated, going up against guys like W.E.B. Du Bois, who had a degree from PhD, first black guy from PhD, I believe Harvard or Yale, going up against him, had W.E.B. Du Bois going and coming, had way more leaders than him, were a lot more charismatic, had things, had factories, had boards, W.E.B. Du Bois had none of those things, but he had a degree from the Ivy League schools. So that's a good example.
I agree with the points you made. The thing is that...
Not to knock a formal education, but it's just to show you that it tends to, the more formally educated you tend to be, the less... they tend to take less risks. Those that don't have the formal education normally have nothing to lose and tend to take the risk.
And at the same time, I always tell my friend, I am grateful for my education in the United States.
Yes, sir.
Because I use a lot of the things I learned there in my business, especially when it comes to economics, etc.
Yes, sir.
So I think that, in a way, like you said, not knocking education.
No. But it constricts you sometimes,
Some people, it really goes the opposite. You know? So you now as secretary for Post-War Legal Foundation, did anyone ask you in Azerbaijan about St. Martin in terms of the education part?
Okay, so one thing that struck me in the trip to Azerbaijan was they did their homework, they did their research. They knew a lot about what was going on the northern side of the island, and they knew a lot about what was going on the southern side of the island. Yes, as a matter of fact, during the presentations that we had a parliament member of Azerbaijan made a presentation about what was going on in St. Martin on both sides of the island, and we had two young university students also made a presentation, so they were very well informed. They did ask questions about education. Education is very important in Azerbaijan. A lot of their students study abroad. France particularly, I heard a lot of French when I was there, a lot of Azerbaijanis speaking French as a second language, and English, of course. And yes, I was asked about education in St. Martin. For me personally, I think I like the CXC system that we have for our secondary students. We tend to perform well regionally, as far as the CSEC or the CXC curriculum is concerned. With most of the high schools that have it, we tend to have every year students performing very well regionally, and I'm happy with that. I would also like to see, like I've stated before, I know that the Constitution states that we have two official languages, Dutch and English, but I would like to see more English instruction. Keep Dutch as a language as a language to be learned, because obviously we have two official languages, but I would like to see ultimately where English is the language of instruction, because that's the language that our students grew up learning here in St. Martin. So the state of education can always be improved. I think the main thing that we need right now for education is resources. We have good teachers. We import good teachers from around the region, and they're doing an excellent job. Most of our teachers that I work with are not St. Martiners. I'm a rare breed of teacher, of educator. I'm born here, I'm male. I'm born here and I'm a male.
You're one of a million people?
Yeah. So you're not going to find many teachers that are male and born in St. Martin. So I'm in a very small, select group. But the teachers that we bring in are quality. They care. They give back. But I think the issue that we're having right now is resources. We need resources. And for me, the idea again that I have, when you have an investor come in, yes, and they want to put down 60 units someplace, have these investors adopt a school. Have them.
They used to do that years ago.
Bring it back again.
Yeah.
So you see, everything I'm telling you, this is not things that are new.
Yeah.
Just have them adopt a school, adopt a hospital, adopt a road, adopt a neighborhood. And then what you will do is you will make these corporate citizens feel as if they're part of the fabric of the society rather than these, and I'm just going to say controversial, these under the table handouts to get like I said, I'm going to say it. So that under the table handout that you're taking, right? Or that's being made in order to facilitate, let them adopt a school, for example. Now, when they adopt a school, these gentlemen that are actually the inventors, they can come out in the forefront, show their faces, stand next to the students, stand next to the teachers, because they have nothing to hide because they did it the right way. And then they become good corporate citizens and we can drive the country forward.
Brison, I wish that could happen.
They can. It just takes people with transparency and true integrity, not talking and doing it.
You know what investors are saying now when they come to Simran?
Oh, yeah.
That they have to include 5 to 10%
the fee
for the politicians.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and now that 5 to 10%, right? If the politician was actually, because look, on the flip side, the politician is getting nice salary. You have a driver. You fly for free, basically. You have a credit card. You have the rest of it. Why do you need that 5 to 10% to get things facilitated that's going to make the country better? Have these corporates, have these investors go and meet with our children, because at the end of the day, these investors who start businesses here need employees. And where are these employees coming from? They're coming from our secondary schools. So it's a 1-2 connection. But like I said, vision is not for all.
As an educator,
yes, sir.
How do you see? Because go back to before the Mac. Before the Mac,
it was all yes.
Right, you know what it was?
Yes, sir. All Dutch. Yes, sir.
The Mac came along, and I think changed everything.
Yeah.
Can you imagine Simran today without the Mac?
Reverend, I always say this all the time. I happened to work with the Mac 5 years, the high school, and then I left recently. I always say this, Reverend John A. Gomes, he is a true revolutionary of St. Martin, because what you see going on at St. Dominic's High School, what you see going on at the Academy came out of the MAC system, and all these English-based schools that you see going on, had it not been for the vision again of Reverend John A. Gomes in the mid-70s or early 70s, to have this happen, it wouldn't happen. So at all of the times, we have to remember Reverend John A. Gomes as a stalwart, educational stalwart.
He had some political support, right?
I would not know, because that was around the time when I was a little young man, so I wouldn't know that. I just know that having worked at the Mac High School for 5 years, he was a very instrumental part of, they honor him all the time for his birthday, etc. I think last year, there was a trip that they actually went over to Anguilla to visit him. I believe it was his 99th or 100th birthday, and he's still fit and still doing everything, knock on wood. But people often forget Reverend John A. Gomes, but he is very instrumental in what we see today.
And at the same time, there are people who feel that it hurts St. Martin because of the Dutch language. I disagree with, but
I disagree with it wholeheartedly, because again, you learn best in the language that you speak at home. So for instance, and I use this as an example, the Dutch were once a colony of Spain. Yes. Imagine during that time, the Dutch people going to school and having to learn everything in Spanish, and then academically in Spanish, but then going home and speaking Dutch. It's the same. I don't have a problem with the Dutch language. I'll just say that. It's in the Constitution. A lot of our documentation is in Dutch. It's not a problem. But what I'm saying is the subscription to having Dutch only as a preference, it's counterproductive to our children, because we don't use it in the media, we don't hear it on the radio. So we need to have a balance. And I think the vision of Reverend John A. Gomes is something that was much needed.
I had last week Mr. Roland Duncan here.
Yes, sir.
And he celebrated 50 years. 50 years as a practicing attorney.
Yes.
In 2024,
yes.
Right? And he's also on the school board.
Yes, he's been an integral part of the FAVE school board for many years.
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
And he was saying that Dutch is weak.
Yeah.
And if we want to produce lawyers, we need the Dutch language.
Right.
And he also gave an example of the medical field where we are restricting
Yes.
doctors if they don't have the Dutch registration number, while Holland's not doing it. So,
Right.
and there's so many areas where we contradict ourselves as a people,
Right.
and not him, but our politicians.
Yes.
So again, it come back.
Well, in all fairness, he's an attorney.
And he's brutally honest.
He's an attorney. So you can't argue with an attorney. I would say this. One of the first tenets of decolonization, Pro Liga has always stated, is we need to join the Eastern Caribbean Court. That's the court system that's used in St. Kitts, Anguilla, the BVI, St. Lucia, all of it. The reason being is all of those islands use the same British common law system. So a lawyer from Anguilla can practice in St. Kitts can practice in Trinidad can practice in St. Lucia. It's all basically the same common law system. And what is the commonality? It's the English language. That's the commonality. Now, we have here in St. Martin, we have a Dutch legal system, but what we see in our courthouses, we see mainly, and we have students who have gone away, like your daughter and others, who've gone away and gotten law degrees, but we don't see a representation of our people as judges in our legal system. We see them as attorneys. We have plenty of attorneys, young attorneys here. We have MP Roseberg, who's accomplished attorney, and we have like people like your daughter and Richard Gibson.
Roseberg was born in the Netherlands, so
I
let her focus on our own, our own people.
Okay, so let's say Brenda, etc., etc. Okay, so we have a lot of young people who recently passed as well. Madam Hoover, Melinda, which just recently passed, another attorney as well. So we have a lot of examples of our students going away and Dutch not being an issue for them to learn the legal system. But what I would like to see is, and this is what I'm not seeing, I don't see us as judges. I don't see us as prosecutors. I only see us as practicing attorneys. And for me, I think there's like some sort of barrier there. Now, you wouldn't see that in the East.
It has to do with money. The interview with Roland Dunker, he said Koyers was a judge in Curaçao. And when they bring judges from Holland, they got everything.
Right.
Everything.
And they don't want to get...
And he wasn't getting everything.
Right.
So he left from being a judge and joined in the law firm.
It has to do with, yes. Okay, so,
and ultimately it comes down to
money. So they don't want to pay. Oh, so it's the pay that the judges get, or the pay, or is it the differential in pay versus the local and the
right. So you have that situation also with the marriage assist.
Right.
Where they come in, they get a house, they get food, they get everything. So nothing wrong with Dutch judges. We need them because we don't have our own. And they do a pretty good job.
Right.
But the problem is the whole colonial system.
Correct.
And this is where the problem comes in.
Correct.
And I'm sure you're a big advocate.
Yeah. Right? Look, and it goes simple like this. If I walk in a courthouse in St. Kitts, I haven't been to St. Kitts since I was a little boy. Yes. Sad but true. I am not expecting to see anybody that does not look like me representing the defense, prosecuting, or a judge. I expect to walk in St. Kitts courthouse and see everyone looking like me. They may not be all Kittitians, but I expect them to see them looking like me. When I go to a courthouse in Anguilla, never been. But just off the expectations of the Eastern Caribbean Court, I expect to see people with the same culture, eat my food, know what oxtail, peas and rice is, know what Johnny Cake is, know what Marby is, running this court system. And I think that is part of a problem that we need to address as well. How are we going to get this court system that we have? And, to go a step further, I think it's part of a reason also that you see, like, over the last 14 years, we've had about maybe 14, 15 politicians held, arrested, etc., etc. And you don't see these on the other islands. Now, I'm not saying that what's going on in St. Martin is not going on the other islands, but I think there's more of a heavy-handed approach to our elected officials. You would have remembered recently former Minister of Education, acting Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport. They went up in his office, took his laptop, took his phone, etc., etc. And he came out and he told them, listen, if you want my laptop, you want my phone, you can have it. I have nothing to hide. So these types of things, I think, can be handled a little more diplomatically if you have your own.
The problem is that you have your own people that are causing it.
Right.
I'm going to say this, it's not the Dutch.
Right.
It's us. Those things that happen, there are people around him who was envious of his accomplishments.
Correct. Yeah.
So they set him up.
Yeah.
And so what happened when the Dutch now make a move, they get to blame it.
Right.
I'll tell you one thing, Mr. Brison. There are many more people that could be picking up and
Of course.
And they're not doing that for the same reason why you just said in the while there.
Right.
But sooner or later, look, I feel, and I used to be a
that's
very
an
naive person.
Yes.
Somebody's a very corrupt place.
I'm not saying, listen, listen, here's what I'm saying. I am not saying that the St. Martin doesn't have corruption. As a matter of fact, I will tell you this. I recently was part of former acting Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport, Minister Lewis. I was in his cabinet as a policy advisor. And when I first got in, just some of the things, the way people were working, I had to tell them, listen, I don't involve myself in those types of things, because at the end of the day, when you leave out of here, I still have to go and face the music with the young people, and I still have to face the music with my name. So you're right, there is a lot of corruption in St. Martin. I'm not saying that there is not. There is a lot of corruption on this island, and thankfully, there are some of us that don't engage in those types of things, but. At the end of the day, why you have so many arrests, but you don't see ultimately people facing the final fire for these allegations of corruption. So there's the holding, there's the court case, but then the final sentencing.
I agree.
You never see that.
What you don't see?
Yes.
You only see our people.
Oh yes, of course.
And it's not our people.
Of course.
Corruption is like, you need two hands to clap. It's the same thing.
Windward Roads. I like to use that as an example all the time. Windward Roads still paving roads, still getting contracts from the government, and they were implicated, but then they turned the narrative. Oh, it wasn't Windward Roads. It was one individual within the organization. Well, if it was my company and your company, we would never get a contract ever again. So there's an example.
But, I still have a lot of confidence still in the legal system.
Of course.
A lot of people see these judges come to St. Martin and they think that they don't know what's going on. They're pretty much aware.
Oh, they're clued in. They're clued in from the time they're appointed in the Netherlands, and they're on their way down. They know exactly what to expect when they get down.
I see many times they make decisions that to compromise for the local culture, etc.
Yes.
So those things are happening.
Yes.
And I see a point to where Eastern Caribbean islands, the legal system, the court, is all their people.
Correct. Which ultimately I would like to see change. I would like to see our young people drive, whether it's, I would like to see it in English, but if it has to be in Dutch, whatever it is, I would like to see our young people prosecuting and as well as being judges.
But then what we need to do, and here's where I'm going to say something maybe that you not like, the schools.
Right.
The schools always invite the wrong people to speak. Start to invite different people.
Right.
Start to invite young, born St. Martin, lawyers, doctors, engineers, you name it.
To show them that you can make it as well.
Born St. Martin.
I agree.
Okay.
Yes.
Nothing against outsiders.
No.
But you need to show them what you got.
Yeah. You got to show them that somebody here went to primary school just like you, went to high school just like you, and made it and came back and is contributing.
Because you see what happened, Mr. Brison? I say something now. I'm going to be like Mr. Duncan. I'm going to be brutally honest.
Yes, sir.
My eldest daughter is an attorney.
Yes, I heard.
But you know who was her biggest enemy? St. Martin people.
They're
all over.
Yeah.
It was a Dutch white judge that says to her, "You're too good to be there working for government. You got to be in the legal system to work for the people." A Dutch white judge.
Yeah.
Okay? And then later on, which law firm finally took over? The law firm, which is Duncan and Brandon.
Correct.
Okay? But everywhere They try to mess her up.
Yes.
The government, everybody. Let me tell you something, Mr. Brison. I promise not to say it, but because of this conversation...
No, we can be brutally honest with one another, yes.
We are
Our own
biggest enemies.
Sometimes, yes.
We need to stop this bullshit of trying to bring down our own people because I don't like you, I don't like she, I don't like... We ain't going nowhere.
I will say this. An important thing of the work I'm trying to do is I always try to understand the conditions of your people. Always understand the conditions of your people. So while we do focus a lot of times on the Dutch, you are entirely correct. There's less of a chance of a Dutchman impeding my career here in St. Martin than one of my own. It is true. And I don't know what that is all about. I can guesstimate, for lack of a better word, of what it's about. But it's the crab and the apple mentality. So you go away, you come back, and the first thing they tell you is you feel you're better than you. And it's not that. You're here to contribute. So what I do, and this is just an advice for youngsters that fall into this category, and what I do, because I get it as well. But the difference with me is I understand the condition of the crab and the barrel mentality. You have to understand it. Then what you do is you distance yourself from it, and you keep working for those that you want to affect. So when I go into work every day, I don't have time for and this is no disrespect to anybody, I don't have time for the board. I don't have time for my leadership team. I don't have time for my colleagues because they are the stress. They are the ones that bring the stress. I deal with those that I want to make the future leaders. That's what I do. So focus on what your goal is rather than what is going to detract you from your goal. Because if you focus on what's going to detract you from your goal, like for instance, let's use your daughter for an instance. Had she continued to focus on all of that negative experience that she had when she was working in government, rather than keep focusing on where she had to go, no, look where she ended up. She ended up in a prominent law firm in St. Martin, but having to go through a little fire. So
we see what happened is, I'm going to come back to the education system. It's important we touch these things.
Yes, sir.
And I promised myself I wasn't going to, but I'm going to do it because you as an educator can let me know how you feel about it. Mm-hmm. My 3 daughters all were top of their classes, okay? One was valedictorian, and they said to her, no, you can't be valedictorian. We have to have the other person who was not looking like her. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Is that handsome out there?
Yeah.
Okay.
But because this person, parents was giving funds and so to the school, they wanted to make it look good, so they put that person. The next one says to my daughter, very bright, we're going to take your speech as valedictorian and have the other guy, the Dutch guy, read it. Right. And he's not valid. No, why? Because it's going to look better. What kind of nonsense is this?
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. And we go on and on. When you have, and like I said, when you have black people telling black children that they ain't good enough as valedictorian to speak or to read their speech because it's going to look better if a white person do it. Yeah. It ain't a white person doing it. Right. It's your own black people telling their own black people, you ain't good enough, although they pass the highest. Right. You see, and this is the problem we have, Mr. Brison. And it's boiling up in me. Yeah. The first time I mentioned this, because, look, it sounds like it's not real. Right. Like it's not true. Right.
No, it is very true. It is very true.
It's true.
It is very true, yes.
Where do we get past this?
I will say this. There's a quote that I want to use right now that I got from, just in my research. And it says basically, just to paraphrase, colonialism, right, cannot operate without its black shadow. So not because somebody looks like me and you, meaning they don't have a certain type of mentality up top. Yes. So that's why I always say you have to understand the condition of your people. You have to understand not all of them are forward thinking, not all of them are progressive, not all of them think the way you do. And I fully understand the condition of my people, from religion to spirituality to education to all of those things. So I fully understand it, and you have to know what you're up against. Conversations like you and I are having right now are not conversations that are had amongst our people a lot. Now, to go back to your situation there, I find that to be a tragedy. What I try to do for myself is always try to instill pride across the whole spectrum in the students, because I know what they're going to face. I remember a time I was teaching at MPC. This would have been in the mid-90s, yes? And I was teaching a bunch of LTS boys, local boys. A lot of them were local boys, and I had them in the afternoon. And I was talking to them, and I said, listen, you know, this school, because I was teaching at St. Dominic's, and then I would come over there in the afternoon to teach part-time. And I saw a stark difference in how they were treated versus the Marvel students, the VVO students.
Exactly.
And I said, no. I used to sit down with them because they, you know, they on the road, and they were buying into the negative stereotype that was placed on them. I said, no. Today.
Because the school was doing that.
The school was doing it.
The school.
I witnessed it. The school was doing it. And most of them were young black men looking like me. I went and I talked to them. Today, we're talking architects. I'm not going to call names. I'm telling you for architects, top farm on the island, policemen, business people, and they all come back to me all the time and say, boy, Brison, if it wasn't for you in those afternoons telling us you could do it. I said, of course you could do it. I did it. I was just like you. So at times you have, and it doesn't happen with a lot of people, but in every organization, you have somebody in an organization who's not there just for the financials. They're there to evoke change. And I'm one of those people.
Well, Mr. Brison, you know, I never thought this show would go this way. But
yeah, you know, we said we're going to have an open conversation, first one for the year. So it's good. Yes, sir.
We're going to, in case you just joined us, this Oral Gibbs Live with Mr. Brison. Mr. Brison is the secretary for Pro Swaliga Foundation. When we come back, we'll continue right here on Oral Gibbs Live. Please stay with us. My guest here on Oral Gibbs Live is Mr. Brison, Secretary for Pro Swaliga Foundation, and here speak with him. I say, you know, we started this interview not to go this way, but you know, every time I bring him, we always have an open conversation.
Correct.
I really appreciate it. You know,
yes, sir.
Your organization bring a lot of awareness.
Yes, sir.
To the people surrounding. What shocked a lot of people in 2024 was when you was attacked. Everybody like, but how is that happening to Brison Pro Swaliga Foundation? It was kind of like strange.
Yeah, we have, as an
I'm referring to when Olivia made the statement.
Yes, so I know that. So what we have done since in our reception of 2020, we've tried to stay clear of making any controversial statements, tried to stay clear of personal attacks. We've tried to make sure that everything we present has been research-based. So when that incident happened with the individual in question, it made him look bad. Why? Because I've been teaching for such a long time. So politicians that are in office, they've sat in my classroom. People that are honorable members of society, I've taught their children. So when you come and you attack me, accusing me of embezzlement and this and that, the next thing, it makes you look bad because people are coming to me and asking me, why is he seeing these things about you? Because I know you and I know you personally and I know you're not involved in these kind of things. So while there was an attempt to discredit me, it ended up discrediting him because, again, you know, when people know you, they know you. It's kind of like if somebody made a statement like that about you, Oral, it wouldn't go too far because you are, you know, known as a moral, upstanding citizen of the community.
But you see, when you're in a small community,
yes,
that happens.
And I'm not going to lie to you. The first 24 to 48 hours after it happened, it drained on me a lot psychologically. But you know what happened to the young people? Because it went around viral on WhatsApp as well. And the young people that I'm engaged with, don't worry with that, Brison. No, don't worry with that. We got your back. So the ones that I served were the ones that stood up for me. So it was okay. It was
But I think most of the population they didn't say anything, but they stood.
Yeah. Well, again, when you have nothing to say, you don't no longer focus on the issues, you start to get personal. Now, I will say this in his defense. He started out very well, but when you start to get vile and you start to get personal, speak to the issues, not the person. Like, for instance, our foundation have a problem with the institution of the governor being here as a representative of the Netherlands, because they don't represent the people of St. Martin. But you will never hear us call out His Excellency Bailey's name in a personal attack, because it's not about His Excellency Bailey, it's about the institution. So you have to make the distinction. And when you can do that, you can have mature conversations and people will listen to you. Yes.
And Pro Swaliga Foundation, like a thorn in the Dutch government side.
Oh yeah, and it's because we've used legal argumentation rather than the tried thing. We want our freedom, and we kind of showed them in international law where they've been offside. Now, the Netherlands pride themselves in being a law-abiding state. You always hear them, a rechtsstaat. So that's what they like to use. So we went down that angle, and when you can show them that they're offsides, especially when they've proclaimed certain things on the international stage, but then they're not being practiced here, it kind of irks them a little bit.
And your uncle is president of the
Yes, he's the president of the founder. He's a constitutional jurist. He got his law degree from UNA, did his research at UE. He's well read across 3, 4, 5 languages. So I'm learning from one of the best. And not just because he's my uncle, but he's one of the best, yes.
And so the organization gets respect.
Yes. One thing with us is, and the reason why is this. When you go out, because you have a lot of organizations out there, but when you go out and you kind of maintain a certain level of decorum, a certain level of maturity, you don't get involved in profanity, you don't get involved in name calling, you don't get involved in you just speak the facts.
You remind people every time what your
what we're there for. So we're not here to tear anybody down. I've had philosophical differences with government officials. I've had philosophical differences with certain bodies here and in the Netherlands, et cetera, But it's about having constructive and mature dialogue. And I think when you can do that, people will respect you. And that's been our our mantra, our philosophy over the last 4 years, not to get involved in the mudslinging, just get involved in sound data that's based on research.
So this year, 2025, you're all celebrating, 5 years?
Yeah, we're going to be celebrating our 5th year, July 23rd, 2025. The work still continues. So, we don't like to announce things too much beforehand. We kind of like to use the element of surprise, but we have some things that are coming up. We have a Facebook page that we're very active on, that we spread information, and we have some things that we believe that are going to happen this year that are going to be a little uncomfortable for certain people. We have to also watch right now the current Prime Minister. He's just gotten into office, finally, after the debacle of 2 elections in 2024. So we're trying to see where he's going, where he's headed. So again, we're not anti-government. We're trying to basically afford Parliament just the opportunity to be able to legislate without having all of these external forces dictating to you how to legislate.
The history of Parliament is not a great one.
It is not.
Legislation.
It is not.
And when you're a parliamentarian and you work real hard, you don't get re-elected.
No, you don't get re-elected. No.
That's unfortunate.
Again, remember we talked about this earlier. It's the level of the electorate. Who are you putting into office? Because at the end of the day, we have a bad habit of going to elections, putting people in office, then turning around and blaming them for not working when if you did your homework from beforehand. That would have solved a lot of issues.
That's because your uncle is president of Pro Swaliga Foundation, always make jokes. You tell me, It's the brown bag.
Oh, yeah. I don't, you see, here's the thing. He likes to say, stuff those envelopes with cash. But me, I'm a little more diplomatic. I don't go down that road. I haven't seen those things. No one has ever, I know it's true, I've heard, but here's what I do. No one has ever approached me. I've never seen it. I've heard about it. So, I don't want to go down that road, but if you talk to him, he will tell you got to stuff those envelopes with cash if you want to get elected somehow.
Unlike Santa Claus, who's not rich. That one.
Right. Yeah, he has a twisted sense of humor when it comes to politics, but I don't go down that road because it's sad in a way. To me it's sad that. But again, Western democracies are all like that because look, in the United States you have something called a lobby. They call it a lobby.
It's a corrupt thing.
The lobbyists.
Legitimize it. That's all.
Right. So when you hear this, the lobbyists in Washington D.C., the lobbyists are people with briefcases of cash running around, throwing it around D.C., but they call it a lobby.
Walking the corridors every day, influencing politicians,
throwing money around. Yeah. But they call them a lobby.
Maybe we should do it like that here.
Yeah, but it won't last long. It wouldn't last long. No, that's not going to be tolerated here. But like I said, Western democracy is based on that, so it is what it is. Yeah.
So you don't like to make announcements of your plans for 2025?
Well, okay, so I'm going to tell you. So for this year, I plan to continue working closely with 1SXM as far as the BACO Initiative Group, as far as more meetings to inform the United Nations about what's going on with us as far as external intervention is concerned. As far as Prosperliga is concerned, we're going to continue with we have not yet written a letter to the new government. What we like to do is whenever there's a new state secretary, we like to inform them of what is transpiring. He just recently came out and said that he wants to get Transparency International or something to come and investigate St. Martin for corruption and those kind of things, to which the President of Parliament replied about our autonomy, etc., 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 and it's invading. So, these types of things. So we're going to send him out a letter. I was going to do it in December, but we're going to start out the new year. So that letter is going to go out to him. And basically, other than that, we play it by ear because, the Dutch government right now, the coalition seems to be a little shaky. So we're keeping an eye on that as well. So for now, we're definitely going to fire off a letter to the State Secretary informing him that his plans to get Transparency International into St. Martin to investigate corruption. Why do you need to do that? You have a prosecutor's office. You have a prosecutor's office here. You have Master Shea here. You have all these people here.
Don't trust his own.
That's what we're going to ask him. You have a CFT here. You have integrity chamber here. You have all of these mechanisms here. Why do you need more?
So that's the problem over the years.
Yeah,
every time you get these different ministers come, and it becomes an issue. Yeah. When it's not an issue.
It's not an issue. You have look, if you want to investigate corruption here, go ahead, no problem. But you have the mechanisms here already in place. Exactly. And these mechanisms that are in place, we didn't even want them. They were forced upon us in exchange for financing. Integrity chamber, etc., etc. They're here.
Maybe they can have the integrity chamber do it.
Let them go to work.
And they have a very respectable person at that organization.
Yeah, let them go to work. Yeah, there's no need to bring in these external forces here into St. Martin, turn over the place. You have your whole people. You control the system, basically. Put it to work.
Well, I'm optimistic in a way.
Yeah.
I want the best for St. Martin.
Yes.
I love this place just like you do. And if St. Martin does well, if the government does well, we all do well.
Yes. Yeah. I'm optimistic as well. Like I said, for instance, this year we have the return of Soul Beach Festival, which is going to be a good injection of capital into the economy right after Carnival. We have more flights. I believe right now we have Air France flying twice a day from France or whatever, different destinations.
A lot of ships coming
in. The low season is not really a low season anymore. You still have, you're still seeing tourists around in the summertime. So I'm always optimistic for St. Martin. I love my island. I love my people. I do get frustrated sometimes, like we had our discussion earlier about the educational system and the infrastructure and certain things that don't work well in St. Martin. But, I don't give up hope. We are a blessed country. People look to come here all the time. We are from here, and we are very inviting people. And I look forward to 2025 being a year of health and wealth for everyone. And like I said, I try not to focus only on the negative sometimes. It's hard because that's the way we're programmed as human beings. But sometimes we need to look at the positive as well.
Yeah, I think focusing on both is good, because if you focus just on one, then your people will not realize.
Correct. That is a balance.
Right.
Yeah, that's a balance.
Again,
yeah.
Mr. Brison, I want to thank you.
Yeah.
All the best.
Yeah.
Right?
Thank you for having me, Oral. All the best in 2025, and I look forward to seeing you again sometime this year. Thank you, sir.
We'll be back soon.
Yes, sir, for sure.
And I want to thank you all for watching and listening to our shows in 2024, and now it's 2025. I want the best for everyone, for every family, every person in St. Martin. And I want to thank my wife for working along with me all the time here. So again, happy 2025, and I hope things work out well for everyone. This has been Oral Gibbs Live on YouTube, Facebook, and on Hot 99.9 FM radio. See you next time. Take care. Bye.